The U.S. says it's prepared to confront China's threat. This comes after reports that Beijing has built mock-ups of U.S. warships in a remote desert. Top U.S. officials voiced concerns about the life of a citizen journalist in China. She was sentenced to prison for reporting on what really happened during the height of the pandemic in Wuhan. Beijing has been collecting Americans' DNA data, but what makes those details especially attractive for the Chinese regime? We dive into what drives the effort. Poor air quality remains a major issue in China, but the nation's pollution is now causing trouble elsewhere. A Chinese-owned steel mill coats one Serbian town in dust, sending cancer rates soaring. Germany takes action to ensure stability in the Indo-Pacific. For the first time in 20 years, the country has sent a warship to Japan. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. The mock-ups of U.S. warships China has built in the desert haven't gone unnoticed. U.S. defense officials say they are aware of China's moves and wary of them.
Potential conflicts with China.
I'll tell you what we're concerned about, Tara, is the increasing intimidation, coercive behavior of the Chinese military in the Indo-Pacific, and also the coercive tactics they are using, using economic tools around the world to bend other nations to their will or to their view of what's in their best interest.
In a news briefing on Monday, Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby said instead of focusing on China's intention behind the mock-ups, which is presumably to practice bombing runs, the U.S. will focus on its own readiness and China's current behavior in the Indo-Pacific.
We're focused on developing the capabilities, the operational concepts, making sure we have the resources and the right strategy in place so that we can deal with the PRC as the #1 pacing challenge.
Earlier on, media reports called attention to models with the dimensions of U.S. aircraft carriers and other warships appeared in a desert in China. But China's foreign ministry on Monday denied knowledge of the mock-up U.S. warships. The U.S. State Department says it is deeply concerned about a jailed Chinese citizen journalist. She was imprisoned for reporting on the Chinese Communist Party or CCP virus outbreak in Wuhan, China.
Next, the United States is deeply concerned about the deteriorating health of PRC citizen journalist Ms. Zhang Zhan. According to multiple reports citing her relatives' comments, Ms. Zhang is near death. In December of 2020, Beijing authorities sentenced Ms. Zhang to 4 years in prison on charges associated with her journalism on COVID-19 in Wuhan. The United States, along with other diplomatic missions, we have repeatedly expressed our serious concerns about the arbitrary nature of her detention and her mistreatment during it. We reiterate our call to the PRC for her immediate and unconditional release.
Because of heavy government censorship in China, the public often relies on citizen journalists to keep them informed. Zhang traveled to the early epicenter of the CCP virus outbreak in February 2020. She reported first-hand news and captured video of the horrible toll the outbreak caused in the city. She spread her findings on social media until her communication channels were cut. Later, she was arrested and sentenced to 4 years in prison for what the authorities called causing trouble. Zhang told her mother that she won't end her hunger strike protest in the prison until the court clears her name. Her brother said in a social media post that his sister, at 6 feet tall, now weighs less than 90 pounds. He is concerned she won't survive the winter. Zhang's lawyer tried to fly to Shanghai to talk to Zhang's mother, but was hindered at the airport. He said the authorities had manipulated his health information on his mobile phone to prevent him from leaving his city. Before boarding the airplane at an airport in his home city Changsha last Friday, Xie Yang's health QR code on his mobile phone suddenly turned red without any apparent reason. The QR codes are part of China's official contact tracing system. They alert users and authorities when a person comes in close contact with an infected patient. People will only be able to leave the city if their code shows green, meaning a clean bill of health. And the authorities are able to change the code color as they like. As a result of his red code, Xie was not allowed to leave the city. After 2 days, his health code returned to green, also seemingly without cause. Xie said the authorities are misusing pandemic prevention measures to suppress citizens.
They are now using the health code as a tool for control. For the CCP, this is the lowest cost model for maintaining control. if we don't take any legal action, it is likely to be widely adopted in the future.
Xie said he will try to go to Shanghai again to meet Zhang's mother, and he will take legal steps against authorities manipulating his health code. 2 U.S. senators are pushing for a bill that will make it harder for Beijing to get its hands on Americans' personal health data. Before we get to the details of the bill, here's the important background. The Chinese regime has been collecting large sets of data on Americans, especially sensitive health data. And Beijing has been doing it through both legal and illegal means. One of the legal avenues is through buying U.S. firms that handle health data. Like in 2013, China's BGI Group bought an American genomic sequencing firm. And in 2015, another Chinese company bought U.S. firm Nextcode Health. This is one of the loopholes the new bill aims to close. Currently, a U.S. government agency called CFIUS is guarding against these foreign investment deals. If the agency suspects a deal could threaten America's national security, it can recommend that the president block the deal. Right now, if foreign companies want to buy American firms that handle personal data, they are not required to report the move to CFIUS before cutting the deal. It seeks to give CFIUS the power to make companies declare these actions before completing the transaction. Senators Marco Rubio and Raphael Warnock introduced the measure. But foreign investment isn't the only way Beijing can collect Americans' health data. The regime has also been stealing it. One of the most famous examples came in 2015 when Chinese hackers stole health data on over 70 million Americans from health insurer Anthem. The stolen data included names, health identification numbers, social security numbers, and income information. Another important piece of health data Beijing has been collecting is Americans' DNA. DNA is extremely valuable information for Beijing. That's because it provides intimate details about its owner, like whether they're inclined toward addiction or at risk of getting cancer. A U.S. intelligence report says if Beijing gains this information about an individual and can also identify the person, it'd be easier for Beijing to target him or her for manipulation or extortion. For example, data associated with an embarrassing addiction or mental illness could be leveraged for blackmail. Some individuals are also more likely to be targeted than others, like diplomats, politicians, high-ranking federal officials, or military leadership. The report also says Americans' health data may be particularly attractive to Beijing, partly because the U.S. population is more ethnically diverse. And also, unlike other nations, the U.S. has relatively loose control over its health data, so it's easier to get a hold of. Aside from theft and foreign investment, Chinese companies can also get health data through forming business partnerships. Here's how it works. American hospitals and universities are always on the lookout for low-cost genomic sequencing services, and Chinese firms can always offer competitive pricing because they are backed by government subsidies. This opens the door for Chinese firms to get American patients' health data. At least 15 Chinese firms have been able to access American patients' genetic data through providing genomic services. Back on Chinese soil, if Beijing decides it wants data from these companies, they literally cannot say no. They are required by law to comply. Last but not the least, Chinese companies can collect American data through virus testing kits. Chinese gene giant BGI Group has been selling COVID-19 virus test kits to countries including the U.S. BGI found itself in hot water earlier this year. The company was accused of harvesting data from millions of pregnant women. And last year, BGI said it would provide virus test kits to Kansas City. In a statement, BGI said city leaders would buy 50,000 test kits from the company. BGI has eyes on outside America, too. Currently, it's sold test kits to almost 200 countries. Back to Beijing, the Chinese regime is serious about its race to becoming a global biotech leader. It lists health data collection as one of its national priorities and has dumped billions of dollars into the industry. Having large sets of data on hand would spell major commercial value for Beijing, as it would help China develop better drugs and health treatments. In the long run, it could even outpace America's biotech industry. This not only means loss of U.S. jobs, but also more reliance on Chinese medical cures and treatments. Economic value aside, the data also enhances Beijing's surveillance abilities. The regime has been mass collecting DNA data on ethnic minority groups and uses that data for control and religious persecution. On top of actively collecting health data from abroad, Beijing is keeping close watch on health data within its borders too. Authorities there have passed a new law, making it very hard for foreign companies to access health data on Chinese patients. Reports of another pandemic-related lockdown incident in China are flowing in. In southwestern Sichuan, over 30,000 people were held for hours by authorities outside a shopping center. Staff placed the entire shopping center under emergency lockdown, and all shoppers were forced to get virus tested for COVID-19 on site. They weren't allowed to leave until results came back negative. All because one suspected virus patient had paid an earlier visit to the building. Videos posted online show that some people managed to escape the area and avoid the mass testing. But local police later located some of them and forced them to get tested. Authorities say the over 30,000 tests came back negative, and the shopping center has since reopened. Now we look to China's air pollution. Over 90 cities in China were hit by smog starting last week, and almost 30 cities in eastern and northern China were hit by heavy pollution, including Beijing. Photos provided by a Beijing resident shows heavy smog surrounding buildings last Saturday. The resident says visibility had dropped to about 300 feet that day. In recent years, Beijing has had more frequent bouts of smog. The most recent heavy bout was just several weeks ago. Another Beijing resident says it's hard to treat the pollution due to China's political system. In China, each region's economic growth is linked to the officials' political achievements, and pursuing economic growth often comes at a cost to the environment. To protect the residents' identity, we have distorted her voice.
Fixing the pollution would cost a lot of money, and who wants to do that? The authorities often prioritize economic growth and want to boost the GDP numbers as it helps with their promotion. After that, they just went to work in another place. They don't really care about the environmental damage left behind.
Pollution caused by Chinese factories are not only affecting Chinese people, but other parts of the globe, such as Europe. And industrial pollution from a Chinese-owned steel mill coats one Serbian town in dust. Cancer rates quadruple among its residents. Rachel Judah reports.
A few hundred meters from the huge furnaces of the Smederevo steel mill in central Serbia, the village of Readiness is covered in thick red dust. Cancer rates here have quadrupled in under a decade, and residents want the Chinese-owned plant to either clean up or shut down. 70-year-old Zoran, a throat cancer patient who speaks with a voice prosthesis, says locals dry their laundry indoors and use vinegar to clean the dust from their cars.
Everything is indoors. We are not going out. We do not dare because of the dust and pollution. We are breathing in all of that.
According to the local public health body, the municipality of around 100,000 people reported more than 6,800 cancer cases in 2019, up from just over 1,700 in 2011. The plant was bought from the Serbian state for €46 million 5 years ago by China's biggest steelmaker, Steel. The company rejects claims cancer rates are directly associated to the plant and say they have invested €300 million into technology and pollution reduction since the purchase. Yet activists contend the steel mill is an example of Chinese-owned industrial firms ignoring pollution standards. Campaigner Nikola Kristic says analysis of the red dust showed a high concentration of heavy metals.
I think it is beyond comprehension that in 2021 we have to discuss the dust which is falling on our heads. Black dust, red dust, which is greasy, which sticks to lungs, which makes breathing difficult. That we have to speak about slag, which is deposited wherever they find it convenient. To speak about air, which can be smelled and tasted. About people who have to dry their laundry in glass houses, who have to wash their crops before using them.
Serbia, a long-standing candidate for EU admission with an uneasy relationship with the West, has forged close ties to Beijing, with China investing billions of euros into the country's infrastructure projects over recent years. Serbia's mining and energy minister, Zorana Mihailovic, told Reuters that if companies cannot reduce pollution, they must be fined or must halt operations.
Germany has sent a warship to Japan for the first time in 20 years, joining a mission to ensure safety and stability in the Indo-Pacific. It comes amid territorial disputes and a changing military balance in the region. Here's more.
The chief of the German Navy on Tuesday said the dispatch of a warship to the Indo-Pacific shows Germany's concern for peace in the region, hinting at but not naming China. He said territorial disputes and a changing military balance could cause extensive impact beyond Asia. Vice Admiral Kai-Achim Schombach told a press conference the warship will pass through the South China Sea to demonstrate its right to sail there without interference.
The South China Sea is a global common. That is a sea that belongs to everyone, so it cannot be taken possession of or claimed by anyone if we abide by the international world order.
Schombach was in Tokyo to mark the German warship Beijing's port call in Japan. It's the first German warship to visit Japan in 20 years. Dignitaries from both countries spoke on board.
The Indo-Pacific is one of the strategically most important regions of the world. Important decisions over freedom, peace and prosperity in the world are being made here. Deploying our frigate to the Indo-Pacific makes clear that Germany stands up for our common values.
The Japanese defense minister said the frigate's visit shows Germany is determined to be involved in the peace and security in the region.
This determination will be widely acknowledged. It greatly contributes to the realization of a free and open Indo-Pacific. I hope this will extend to other European countries.
One of the Beijing's key missions in the area is to monitor North Korean ships to ensure they abide by a UN Security Council resolution. Anna Rodriguez, NTD News.
Germany followed the US and UK in sending warships to the Indo-Pacific as the West weighs how to deal with the Chinese Communist Party's coercive military moves, including threatening Taiwan with its airplanes and building artificial islands in disputed waters. As Beijing announces its interest in joining a major international agreement on the digital economy, experts are concerned about the global ambitions hidden behind the communist regime's words.
Earlier this month, China announced that it applied to join the Digital Economy Partnership Agreement. Chinese Communist Party head Xi Jinping said China hoped to cooperate with the international community to promote the development of the digital economy. But experts are concerned that the communist regime would violate the privacy of people in other countries, as it has been doing to its own people.
The totalitarianism in China in the past few years, to some extent, is related to their technological development and digitalization. This enables very powerful control, including through WeChat or facial recognition, and other various ways to know what you're doing. It's currently violating the privacy of the Chinese people. If it connects with the international community, will it in the same way invade the privacy of people in other countries? China wants to compete with the U.S. to dominate the future world development of the digital economy. If it succeeds, suppresses, or surpasses the U.S., then the freedom of all nations will be restricted in the future.
Li believes that the international community should resist Beijing's entry into the digital economy agreement.
The biggest reason is that only freedom can innovate. Only free innovation is the foundation of the digital economy. The regime suppresses freedom and wants to dominate the world by stealing technology. Why not reject it?
Singapore, New Zealand, and Chile signed the agreement last year. It's the first agreement of its kind, aiming to help strengthen global cooperation in that area. The CCP's application to join the deal follows its request to join another major partnership in the region, the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership. The U.S. is in neither of these agreements.
Taiwan held its own environmental event on Sunday alongside the UN's climate summit. As Taiwan is not a member of the UN, it couldn't take part in the summit. The event came amid reports that some British politicians received letters from the Chinese consulate pressuring them not to attend Taiwan's event. This story comes from NTD's Jane Werrell.
Reports that some Scottish politicians received a letter from the Chinese consulate in Edinburgh asking them not to attend a Taiwanese environmental event taking place alongside COP26 in Glasgow. The letter reportedly saying, "The host of events schemingly exploit your capacity as MSP to endorse their independence obsession under the cover of climate cooperation between Taiwan and Scotland. I hope you can see through it and do not attend the Taiwan Day event." Scottish Labour politician Paul O'Kane told LBC Radio he was shocked to receive the letter. It didn't put him off attending.
For decades, Beijing has been trying to exclude Taiwan from all international organizations and prevent other countries from maintaining contact with the democratic island. An award-winning movie director has released a new movie, taking an in-depth look at the inner workings of the Chinese Communist Party. We sat down with the director to hear more about the details of his film. NTD's Don Ma has more.
More than 10,000 Falun Gong practitioners protest.
A movie exposing the Chinese Communist Party's modern-day persecution is winning awards at an Oscar-contending film festival. Directed by Peabody Award-winning director Leon Lee, the film Unsilenced was honored with the Audience Award for Best Narrative at the Austin Film Festival.
Just tell me a little bit about this movie.
Sure. Unsilenced tells the story of a team of innocent students in China, how they helped a foreign reporter to expose human rights atrocities. It's based on real-life events and stars Sam Tremell and Anastasia Lee.
You cannot sit by and watch them be manipulated
into turning against each other.
Okay, no, I'm a reporter with Chicago Post.
Sam Tremell is widely known for his role in the HBO series True Blood, and Anastasia Lin is an award-winning actress who also won the title of Miss World Canada in 2015. The film follows a Chinese student, Wang, who is a Falun Gong practitioner. It's set in the late 90s, and it depicts his and his friends' attempts to navigate the CCP's 1999 order that banned the spiritual meditation practice inside China. Lee says the movie also shows the audience how different departments of the CCP operate.
What do you think audiences will have a better understanding of after seeing your movie?
Now, because Unsilenced is based on real-life events, we try to take the audience to the inner workings of the Chinese regime on how particular well-known incidents were fabricated by the government.
Unsilenced has already screened at a number of film festivals.
During the screenings in different festivals, I was moved to see how the whole story resonated with the audience. Some people will find that the situation depicted in the film are not only in China. They may be able to find similar things around them in the West.
The movie will have a limited theatrical release on top of a digital release. Don Ma, NTD News.
The UK said it would recognize COVID-19 vaccines on the World Health Organization's emergency use listing later this month. This adds China's Sinovac and Sinopharm, as well as an Indian vaccine, to the country's approved list. Travelers injected with Chinese vaccines will then be granted access to the UK. The changes will come into force starting November 22nd. The country's Department for Transport said on Monday that travel rules will also be further simplified. All people under the age of 18 will be treated as fully vaccinated at the border and will be able to enter England without self-isolating on arrival. The U.S. relaxed its travel restrictions on Monday, announcing a list of approved shots, including the 2 Chinese vaccines. Thanks for watching, and see you tomorrow.